welcome everyone that is watching this and also tuning in live here. So I know that we were actually scheduled to have our guest speaker on Wednesday, but there was just a few things that happened that we had to reschedule for today. But we're super excited to have him join us today. Before I get started, of course, if you guys do have any questions here, feel free to put them in the chat. And then also, once this video is posted to our Facebook page, feel free to comment on the video and what you think. And if you have any questions, our guest speaker will have access to this to be able to also answer any questions that come about if you guys have any questions after viewing it. So my name is Wes Van Epps. I am an outreach specialist here at Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, and I'm also joined here today by my co-workers Megan Selakowski and Monte Ball. So before we get started here, so Monte is actually going to be kind of kicking us off here once I introduce our speaker and some great topics today that we have prepared. So we're just going to dive right into it. So today we have Fred Garcia with us, joining us live. So Fred Garcia is a bilingual and bicultural Wisconsin state licensed social worker. His employment at Waukesha County Department of Health and Human Services for the past quarter of a century has provided him with an opportunity and a platform to provide services to the community and advocate for inclusion and diversity. As a supervisor at Waukesha County, Mr. Garcia supervises social workers in the Adolescence and Family Division. Mr. Garcia is the former director of the Hispanic Collaborative Network and sits on several advisory board and boards of director. Mr. Garcia is a strong advocate for the Hispanic community and for the recovery movement. And then also just to mention, he is on the Wisconsin Voices for Recovery Advisory Board as well. So I've been able to meet Fred a couple of years ago as a member of the advisory board myself, and now currently working with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery. So welcome, Fred. I'm just going to bring you in here, and if you want to just give us a little background about yourself, the line of work that you are doing currently, and maybe even a little bit about what interested you in this line of work and what you're doing today.
Well, thank you, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak to our community today. I really appreciate that as well. Well, as you heard in my bio, I've been a social worker for the past 25 years at Waukesha County Department of Health and Human Services. And I think, for me, the reason I got into the field was a lot of the work that my mom did as a bilingual secretary at an elementary school for 30 plus years. And she instilled in us really reaching out to the community and helping out wherever we can. In my current position at Waukesha County, I really try to work with my staff regarding inclusion and diversity and really come from that lens. I started working with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, I want to say maybe 10 or 15 years ago. Whenever the advisory council started is when I came on board. And I knew the former director, Flo Hilliard, from some of the work that she was doing with adolescents and with the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And that's how I became involved. And one of the things that I have really learned over the years by providing direct service and supervisory support for staff is that from my perspective, I really saw a disproportionate array of services for minority populations when it came to alcohol and drugs and recovery. For many years, the work that I've done, we do family work. And so either our parents or our young people may have struggles with addiction. And the services that were offered to many of the clients that I worked with, they were not appropriate because of the language barrier or sometimes because of the cultural barriers that might exist in the Latino community as it relates to clinicians in the AODA field. And so there were periods of time where here in Waukesha, we were sending families all the way to Milwaukee to receive services regarding AODA treatment and recovery. And it just really was not ideal. I can't say that a lot of changes happened over the last 25 years that I've been doing this work, but I think now there's a more emphasis on culturally sensitive and cultural, uh, keeping in mind cultural differences when it comes to all types of therapeutic services, not only AODA and recovery, but also mental health services. And really the importance of hiring bilingual, bicultural staff to do these services. And as we all might know, I think clinicians in the AODA field are hard to come by already. But in many fields, when you try to find somebody who's bilingual and bicultural, that's even more challenging. But I think we owe it to our community members to really seek out those clinicians and hire them, pay them a little bit more because of the extra skill that they have in order to provide services to the whole community. The other thing that I think about when I talk about AODA services and recovery is that there are a lot of cultural differences with the Latino community with regards to AODA services and recovery. And you know what I saw was that there's a bigger movement in the recovery community for the majority of the population, and mostly the Caucasian folks who are experiencing recovery and living through recovery and working in recovery. And I don't see that same type of information being disseminated within the Latino community and other minority populations. And so what I do know is that the hope that comes along with recovery is something that is very important to individuals. And I would like to see that across the board to all people, not just the majority of the population, because I've seen real life examples, including those people that I've met in Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, that recovery is attainable, recovery is hope for the future. And oftentimes in the families that I've worked with in the past, a lot of Latino families are feeling somewhat either alienated or isolated in their own recovery. And then the shame that comes along with being labeled an addict, or being labeled someone who's dependent on drugs or alcohol. That stigma, I think, for a lot of Latino families is still there today. And even at a higher degree, I would argue, because the lack of services that these individuals are able to participate in.
Yeah, I think those, Fred, I wanted to chat with you, Monte here.
Not,
For those who don't know, I outreach specialist as well at the Wisconsin Voices for Recovery. And Fred, it is awesome to have you on. And I think you have some wonderful topics that I'm very excited for you to cover today, because obviously I was brought on board to my goals are for the African American community, even other people of color communities as well. So it's just so awesome to talk to you about these things. And I kind of want to just hop right into it. And you kind of already chimed in a little bit about this, but I know that some of your initiatives are obviously you're looking forward to trying to get more engagement from the Latino community in AODA treatment, and your goal is to have the hope for recovery for all. So kind of what are some of the things that you are doing and looking to see? What is it that you want to happen within these Latino communities?
thank you, Monty. It's a good question. And there are a couple of things that we're working on right now at the Department of Health and Human Services with regards to inclusion and diversity. And the first thing is we have to hire bilingual, bicultural staff. And to do that, you have to have an agency that is welcoming to those communities. And I'll use Waukesha County as an example. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the demographics of Waukesha County is probably 90% Caucasian, very few people of color in our community. And yet the disproportionate minority contact that happens in Waukesha County really is geared towards Black and brown people. So there are disproportionate numbers of Black and brown people involved in the system, whether it's regarding AODA, mental health, criminal activity, our jails, our children who are placed outside of the home, our adolescents that are going to corrections. All of those numbers are disproportionately higher in our community. So we have to make a conscious effort to, again, hire bilingual, bicultural staff and make that a priority. And here's an example of some of the things, again, that are happening in Waukesha County. So in my division, we have about, out of 33 social workers, we have 5 social workers that are bilingual and bicultural. And that didn't happen by accident. We as a division made that a priority, and we wanted to make sure that we were meeting the needs of the community. But that isn't the way the thing is, that is not the way things are in our whole building, in our whole department. And so in many ways, we get pulled into different departments to ask to translate or interpret documentation from English into Spanish and Spanish into English. And recently, we've taken the stance that we are not going to do that. You need to hire your own bilingual, bicultural staff in your different areas to meet the needs of the clients that we serve. So in a lot of ways, we have to outreach to our leaders and our management and make that a priority, because the few number of people that we do have can't be doing all the work for everybody. So that's the one thing that I would say, to really, but again, you have to make sure that your agency is inclusive and welcoming to minority populations. You know, for a while, I think that in Waukesha County, we've had many minority staff members leave the department because they didn't feel comfortable. And now we have a inclusion and diversity report that we do once a year, and we track how many minority staff are leaving the agency and the county, and so we're taking a look at those numbers as well. The second thing I think is that we have to, in the staff that we do have, we have to educate them and train them with regards to cultural competency and cultural differences that they may not be aware of. I'm not saying that every Hispanic or Latino person needs to have a Latino or Hispanic clinician working with them, but at the minimum, the clinicians have to be educated and trained on cultural differences and how to best work with these populations. So the training, education, retainment of minority staff and the recruiting of minority staff, I think, are of most importance if you are serious about inclusion and diversity and providing services to the Latino community.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I really do. And I truly believe in that as well. I think in order for an organization to get to a point to where they want to serve the, community that they're looking to serve, they have to, have a representation of that community. They have to build that trust. They have to become welcoming. They have to, kind of walk the walk in a sense of becoming inclusive. So I love that you mentioned that, because that's what I harp on as well. And I always go back to what you said a while ago in one of our meetings where you talked about trust. Trust is a huge thing for our communities of color, because, and I'm just gonna say exactly what you said. We were expecting for these communities of color to trust, white people who, for the longest have, obviously not all white people, but you know what I mean, have done some things to, really oppress these communities. So I think that's a huge one of kind of getting that trust and focusing on that and having that representation. So that's awesome that you mentioned that. And I think that goes into your next topic as well, are some of these barriers for culturally appropriate services. And I think you kind of already mentioned that the biggest barrier, I think, would be trust, but then also some of these organizations needing to represent the communities that they're trying to serve. So I think that's an awesome thing. I think that's really an awesome thing right there. So what are maybe some other barriers that you may be coming across?
Well, I think some of the barriers, like you already talked about a little bit, Monte, is, you know, the whole issue of trust. And I think that there's sometimes a lack of collaboration between providers and individuals who are trusted in the community. And here's what I mean by that. I'm working on a stakeholders group to work on COVID issues in the Latino community, because as we also know, COVID is disproportionately higher in percentage rates in the African and Latino communities. And one of the things that we are really talking about is bridging the gap between the community and the resources. And so sometimes I think the bridging of that gap is a barrier to get the information out there in order to assist the families in need. And the way that can happen is that as a social worker in the county, I have a lot of contacts with family members who've known me for years because I've been here for 25 years. And so they've come to trust me when I say to them, you need to go see this clinician at 16th Street Community Health Center. They have a bilingual, bicultural person there. Her name is Lee Whiffley. I know her. She will help you with these issues. And so we need more of that bridging to happen. So I think that is one of the barriers that that we have right now, is that we don't have individuals bridging that gap. So we have to identify those individuals, put them into contact with the agencies that need the services, so that we can bridge that gap and hopefully work on that trust issue. The second thing is that especially in AODA, and same thing in social work, we need to pay people who can earn a living by providing those services. Now, you know, for those of us who are bilingual, you know, in many ways, we're like gold. Any agency that we go to, you know, we're going to get a job over somebody else because of that skill that we have. But there are very few of us in the field. I only know of I know a number of clinicians in the AODA field. The majority of them are all Caucasian. I know maybe 2, maybe 3 clinicians that are bilingual, bicultural. And they're so overwhelmed with the workload because, again, all of those monolingual Spanish-speaking clients are going to them. They get overwhelmed. They get burnt out. They're not getting paid very well. They leave the agency. So we have to make it a priority to train, educate, and hire bilingual staff and pay them what they're worth in order to provide that service to the Latino community.
Man, I love that, Fred. So I love what you're mentioning, because we're talking about the system. We're talking about rebuilding, you know, the infrastructure of some of these organizations, and I think that's a topic that needs to continuously be talked about or brought to the table. So that is great. So then the topic that you have as well is engaging the Latino community in solution-focused initiatives. I would love for you to chat about that, because obviously once I was presented with your topics, I read through them, and this is the one that I've been very thrilled to hear you talk about, some solution-focused initiatives, because that's a huge one topic that I love.
Well, one of the things that I think when we talk about solution-focused initiatives, we have to include the community in that. A while back, this might have been before your time, I'm a little bit older, and been around a little bit longer, but there was a program called Teen Intervene. I don't know if you've ever heard of that curriculum, but we were doing it in the school systems, and the Teen Intervene program was a solution-based approach to AODA treatment within adolescence. And the way that got started was that we engaged young people who were having challenges with alcohol and drugs and brought them to the table and developed a curriculum that they helped develop for their community. And so when I talk about solution focused, we have to identify individuals in our community, in the Latino community, who have had and overcome or are working on issues of recovery, and include them in the development of curriculum that we can use with other people of color. And so instead of using a curriculum that is more general or for the general population, to be more specific in the approach that we have with Latino families. So for example, for people to know about machismoism, for people to know about the hierarchy within the Latino family and how family systems work, the gender differences and the gender roles between individuals in the Latino community, and how that might affect your outcomes with treatment. So, you know, if we can work together and get individuals in the community who have experienced some of these issues, then share with them some of these cultural differences, and then develop a curriculum to meet the needs of that particular group. So a while back, I was working in collaboration with UW Extension in Madison, and we developed a curriculum called Camina un horas a mis zapatos, which is walk an hour in my shoes, where we talked a lot about those cultural differences. So, you know, and that curriculum came from individuals who are bilingual, bicultural themselves. Not that we have all the answers, but again, some generalizations regarding different segments of the population, and to have clinicians learn those skill set and understand those cultural differences in order to provide those services is what I would see as you know, working with the community to implement those strategies to meet the needs of the client.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah. I'm telling you, once I got the breakdown of your topics, I was like, oh yeah, I need to hear this one, Fred. That's remarkable stuff, man. Because there's so much I'm looking forward to learning from you. so much. I'm gearing towards, you know, our African American communities. I'm teaming up with, you know, 100 Black Men of Madison, some other organizations as well, to pretty much, you know, start some things out that you just mentioned right now. Obviously, you're geared towards the Latino community, and I think it's a beautiful thing, man. I really, really do, because we, you know, these disparities, you know, we gotta attack them head on. We most definitely do. So again, those were some beautiful topics, man, and honestly, you answered everything beautifully, nailed it. So if there's anything you would love to leave us with, because right now we're looking at about 124. Anything you want to leave us with, please, man, please go ahead.
Well, the one thing that I guess I would leave you with is that I really believe that everybody deserves an opportunity for recovery, and everybody deserves services that meet their needs. And I think that, you know, in a day and age right now, things are so fluid, you know, with the civil unrest, the pandemic going on, some of the underlying issues that have been affecting our communities for so long, I think now have been exposed. And now would be the time, I think, to really reach out to our legislators and to our management and to our individuals who can make a difference, because we've been talking about these things for years, Monty. This isn't anything new. When I came on Wisconsin Voices for Recovery all those many years ago, and I don't really know the number, but it had to be 10 or 15 years ago. And Flo Hilliard and I were talking about some of these disparities and differences. They were evident back then. Now, I do believe that there's been a small amount of progress in the area of education regarding biases, white privilege, institutional racism. All of those issues, I think, are being addressed more readily. And I do believe that it's been a step in the right direction. But I think, you know, just like the whole Black Lives Matter movement has gained momentum, I think that the momentum in recovery and hope for people has to gain momentum too. And in order to do that, we need to, people who don't have a voice, we need to help them get a voice, or we have to have a louder voice for them. Because many of the people that I've worked with over the years really felt like they didn't have a voice, partly because where they were in their recovery and in their AODA treatment, feeling a lot of shame and guilt over the things that they have done with regards to the effects of alcoholism and drug dependency, really felt like they didn't have a voice. And so when I can have a voice and when you can have a voice and we can all have a collective voice about, please don't forget about the minority populations when we talk about the hope of recovery. And that's why I stay connected with Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, because I want to continue to bring in the good news that's happening. I want to continue to share my experiences with the families and community members that I work with. And I want everyone to keep this on their radar, that the hope of recovery should be available to everyone, no matter what their differences are, no matter what the color of their skin is, no matter what language they speak. We all deserve that hope of recovery. And we owe it to our community members to provide them with the services that they need. And we also owe it to them to be a part of the solution. And I know many people here in Waukesha, at least, who are willing to be a part of the solution. All they need to do is to be asked. And when they can share their life experiences with others and really talk about what it was for them and the challenges that they had in their own recovery, and how can we together work to mitigate some of those barriers to provide those services to people, the hope of recovery for everybody can be a reality.
Man, you're good. That's beautiful, man. Beautifully summed up. A perfect way to sum this bad boy up. I don't have any questions for you, Fred. You nailed everything. Again, I was thrilled to chat with you, to learn from you, because it's an everlasting process, continuously learning, and I would love to grab some coffee with you to chat more about this.
We will do that. We will do that. That's been on my radar to do. We will do that.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Well, Megan, Wes, if you guys have any questions, please chime in.
Great. Well, I guess I don't have any other further questions, Fred. There were some that I kind of had written down here, but I think you actually answered them pretty full. So you just with a lot of the things that you were talking about, you answered the questions that I had. So I appreciate your time today, Fred. It's great to always hear from you. I know that we get to hear from you at least once a month during our advisory meetings. But yeah, it's just great to hear you talk about this specific topic, and especially like what Monte said, some of the work that he's doing now with us. It's just great to have him on board here to address some of these same issues as well. So thank you again, Fred. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to join us on this live. And for those that will be watching this later, if you have any additional questions for Fred, you can reach out to us, and I'm sure he would be very open to hearing from you if you guys have any questions on anything that was said today. So thank you again, Fred. And for those that tune in weekly, we will be live again next Wednesday with another guest. So feel free to tune in at 1 o'clock. And with that, I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Fred.
Bye, Fred.
All right, take care.